How's it going, everybody? And welcome to this next edition of the Stupid Questions podcast. Today, we are going to be talking with Derek Stone. He is the co founder of Working Triathlete. He is a professional triathlete. He has a degree in, forgive me, I think it's criminal science, but he has extensive background in basically being an undercover, not cop, but merchandise security man for Abercrombie and other companies. Basically, he dresses up and works for these companies and tries to catch people that are trying to steal stuff or tries to catch people doing fraud. And then brings them in, questions them. It's actually really interesting. There's like a lot of negotiation slash like I don't know tactics that he uses and strategies to get people to confess. So super interesting guy, super nice. Can run like nobody's business. His fastest half Ironman is just over 4 hours, 4 hours 15 seconds. He's going to be running his first pro race in December at Indian Wells, 2023. So anyway, without further ado, I don't want to give away too much. This is Derek Stone. Well, dude, it's super great to get to officially meet you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Um, it's been a super great journey so far, but just want to first start off with saying thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to be here and love the opportunity to chat about triathlon and all things
Yeah,
related to it.
yeah, for sure, man. So, where I'd love to start is if you could just, for my sake and the audience's sake, answer this one question: Who is Derek Stone?
Yeah, so my name is Derek Stone. I grew up in Metamora, Michigan, and I spent most of my life there up until after college. So um, I started running track and cross country throughout high school. And then in my career, moved to college. So I went to Saginaw Valley State University, Division II school up in Michigan. From there, I started my career with Abercrombie and Fitch. So I worked in retail for a little over 10 years, and mostly in the loss prevention department for a couple different companies. And
Okay.
then, so my job at the time took me to Nashville, Tennessee, and I met Conrad there. And, that's where, this whole journey began down there. And
Yeah.
that's also when I found triathlon again, too. So after college, I took, some time off from competing and then got married, moved to Nashville, and decided I needed a hobby and jumped into an Ironman event, and I was hooked.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to jump into that, but I want to take a little bit deeper dive in just like to who you are. So you said you grew up in Michigan. Did you grow up there with other siblings? Was there a good family pod there, or are you only
Yeah,
child?
yeah, definitely. So a lot of my family and extended family were in a pretty close area. So I grew up an hour north of Detroit. I have a
Okay.
twin sister as well. So
Oh, nice.
her and I are the youngest of the four. I have two older brothers. Both of them are in Michigan as well at this point. One lives in Western Michigan, and the other one
Okay.
lives closer to my parents right now.
Nice. Michigan. Do you like Michigan?
I love it. I think it's the
Yeah.
best state in the United States.
Really?
Yeah. Well, now I live in Ohio, so I had to say that. But if
Okay.
anyone has ever been to northern Michigan,
Yeah.
like Traverse City area or anywhere in the west coast of Michigan where it borders Lake Michigan, it's pretty incredible. Like the sand dunes in northern Michigan, the scenery
Mm-hmm.
is pretty awesome. But
Yeah.
obviously, with the only downside is the winters can be a little brutal. But most people up there are involved in winter sports, whether it's snowmobiling or
Yeah.
cross country skiing or downhill skiing, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if I could agree to say that I think Michigan is the best of the 50 states, but I will say 2 years ago, I would have said it's the worst state. And maybe Oklahoma would border it. But I started to do a little work where I had to travel up to Michigan every month. And I got to go this small little town, South Haven. You've probably
Yep.
heard of South Haven. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So super pretty little area. I never would have guessed that Michigan is beautiful until I went in kind of to some of the coastal towns. I was like, okay, this has appeal, and especially with the cooler weather, the summers were great. You can grow lots of great fruit and stuff like that. So I would agree on those fronts. But you said downhill skiing.
Yeah, so I mean, there's not like the mountains like you'd see out west or
Yeah,
up in like New York area, but
yeah,
there's small hills, and northern Michigan gets a little bit hillier, so there's more opportunities for it. But nothing to the extent that you're going to see out west.
Yeah, for sure. So what kind of kid were you growing up? Were you high energy? Parents were trying to get you out the house all the time, or?
Definitely high energy. I think anyone can relate that knew myself and my sister. My wife has also now experienced that with our oldest, who's 2 years old. He is
Yeah.
a maniac right now and runs nonstop. So yeah, looking back, my sister and I were always outside in the summertime running around. So we
Mhm.
grew up with a house that had a pond in our backyard and then a lake behind it. So we were always swimming, riding our bikes everywhere, just literally just spending as much time as we could outside during the summertime.
Yeah.
And I remember like where our pond was, we would spend all winter sliding down to our pond,
Oh,
from the
that's
top of the
awesome.
hill. So yeah, I would say definitely high energy. Loved being outside and taking advantage of any opportunity just to get some fresh air and things like that.
Yeah. Who do you think you'd favor after more, your dad or your mom?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think there's a blend when it comes to just personality types. Like I think my dad, the way he thinks about certain things, I definitely um, side with him. But then I think the emotional side, I'm probably more like my mom, just like from
Mm.
like how like just the emotional what's the word I'm looking for, like intelligence of seeing
Yeah,
how people
yeah, the
feel and things
EQ.
like that. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Nice. How old are you?
I'm 35 now.
You're 35.
Yeah.
Okay, good deal. So then walk me through a little bit as you started to grow up, like you started to find some of these outlets for running. What was like your earliest memory of getting into the, I guess, endurance sports or track and field type of stuff?
Yeah, so it's either fifth or sixth grade. The elementary school I went to had this program called the Mustang Miles. So we were like the school's called Maple Grove, and we were the
Hmm.
Mustangs. And like at recess, you could opt to run laps around this field.
Yeah.
And I just remember competing with another guy. We just ran as many laps as we could. And there was like some type of incentive, like we got prizes or something like that. But so it
Yeah.
started there. In seventh grade, I definitely stepped away from running. My sister, on the other hand, though, broke the school record in like the 1600 and the 3200. But
Oh,
then
wow.
eighth grade is when I got back into it. I started running track, and I'll never forget this. So I missed the 800-meter run, which I was supposed to run, and then the coach threw me into the 1600, and I can't remember if I won it that day, but I did really well, and from there
Yeah.
on I started competing at that distance.
Yeah.
um, but and then high school, when high school came along, my sister, uh, she played soccer her freshman year and I ran cross country. But then when track came around, she started dominating right away. So from the female side,
Hmm.
she was crushing it from the 400 all the way to the 3200-meter on the track. And
Yeah.
then sophomore year, we kind of synced up and we were both in cross country and track. And it took until my senior year, though, until I had like a kind of a breakthrough year. Um, and by the time I got to that point, I was running the 400 and the 800. So middle distance and pretty quick stuff. I also
Yeah.
started swimming my senior year as well. I remember my junior year, I missed the opportunity to be on our 4x4 at states, and I was like,
Hmm.
well, this winter, my senior year, I'm going to do everything I can to stay in shape year round. So I joined the swim team.
Yeah. That's awesome. So what has been like your source of motivation? Because I mean, a lot of high school kids nowadays, maybe not a lot. I don't want to throw too many people under the bus, but these types of sports, they are still somewhat popular, but the majority of people have a hard time even getting up. Like, oh, I hate running. It takes this just, I don't know, you have to surmount this huge amount of motivation to get out the door and get it on. So, where did you find the source of motivation to do these things in the beginning?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think part of it was my sister. I mean, she wasn't
Yeah.
faster than me, but from a female side, she was dominating our
Yeah.
conference as a freshman. And I wanted that same type of, success.
Yeah.
We went to a school that, like you said, like we did not have a program that was successful. Um, we had a pretty large high school. There's actually two high schools where I'm from, but like we were out in the middle of nowhere, a bunch of farm boys, loved to play
Mm-hmm.
football, and hockey was really big where I grew up too. So a lot of
Oh,
people on the
sure.
hockey team. Um, But I think part of it was just like chasing, the success my sister was having. And then I made a friend that went to a Catholic school near Flint, Michigan, and they had one of the best programs in the state at the time. And when him and I started running together, like I started to learn the things I didn't know about running, like
Yeah.
because I remember when my sister and I would go to practice, we would cut 3 mile runs short just because we didn't know any better. We're like, oh, we don't want to run that far today. So we're not even running the distance of a 5K, of the
Yeah.
race. And but part of that's just like the culture of the high schools. And the more
Yeah.
I grew up now, I see it. Like for example, there's a girl that lives in my neighborhood. She's a senior this year, and last year as a junior, she ran a 4:47 mile. So one of the
Wow.
fastest high schoolers in the country.
Yeah.
And but she goes to a
Sheesh.
program that's really really successful. And
Yeah.
we just didn't have that program in high school. So the motivation definitely came from within, and obviously this seeing my sister's success really just drove the motivation as well.
Yeah. So there's something I've noticed, not because I think you're a bit more experienced in the coaching world, so you can probably tell me if this is anecdotal or just a complete farce. But it seems like whenever you start running at a younger age and you have structured training, longer down the road, whenever let's just use 70.3 or a full distance, for example, like your ability to run faster seems a lot easier than when if you start, like, because I started like running in my 20s, and it's just like, I mean, you have to work so hard. But then for swimming, it's completely different for me. So everyone's different. It comes a lot easier. But what is it about, do you think, being younger and running at a younger age that like gives you that competitive edge where you can like lay down some speed as you get older?
That's a great question. I think that does vary from person to person. But since running is probably the most traumatic of the three sports to the body, I think
Hmm.
having the years of experience and the durability and the resilience really help later on, as an adult athlete, especially like the
Hmm.
discomfort side of things. So like, you
Yeah.
know, as a coach now, you meet so many different people that maybe start the sport when they're 20s or 30s or even 40s or 50s,
Yeah.
and you don't always know what discomfort feels like, or like you might feel discomfort, but like you
Yeah.
don't know where that level is. And I
Yeah. Where's the
think like when you
threshold?
start running when you're younger, especially like I always use this example, like you go to like a 5K race as a high schooler,
Hmm.
especially as like a freshman, everyone goes out like a bat out of hell, and that lactic acid dumps, and
Yeah.
generally you're positive splitting every race. So like that type of, I'm not saying it's the right way to run it by any means, but like
Yeah.
experiencing that type of discomfort
Yeah.
definitely helps, I think, later down the road as well.
Yeah, it's super interesting because there's a guy named Lane that I ride with every once in a while, and he's an elite like short course athlete, and we'll go out, and I was just doing some, let's just say, some efforts like 200 watts or whatever, and he was struggling more with maintaining 20 minutes at this lower, but then when we did the VO2 stuff, like it's like he could just hold that all day long. He's like, oh, I know what that feels like, and I'd never heard that
Hmm.
from someone before, and I get it now. It's like, oh, you when you, like you're saying, you out of the bat out of the hell in the beginning, and you're just dumping as much energy into this as you can. There's a level of tolerance that you can learn to feel and understand, and I guess get after in the short course stuff. But then the longer stuff, it's like it seems to be different.
Yeah, 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 and that's even interesting too. Like you mentioned, some people can like hit the sensation like of a VO2 workout, and Conrad and I have done a lot of analysis of this too, because there are different athlete types that have like a
Hmm.
high VLA max that have the ability to push those higher numbers really really high, and whether they experience the discomfort or not is one thing, but they just have the ability, and they know what it feels like versus maybe someone going out and maintaining like a 20-minute steady state effort that is just like mildly uncomfortable. They just might
Yeah,
not be able to do it.
yeah, yeah. It's super interesting. There's so much to still learn in this sport. I realize the more that I start to dive into things, I'm like, oh, I know nothing. I guess that's the beauty of it, though, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's even like as an athlete, and you just start to. It is these last few years has been like eye opening with just a lot of things that have come out. The way athletes are training, the amount of volume they're
Hmm.
doing, the type of volume they're doing as well. And I think the more like when you think about the sport as a whole, it's a pretty young sport. So
Yeah.
getting all those data points, from the high level athletes and putting it all together kind of helps us identify what works and what doesn't as well.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me a little bit about so you were a three-time conference champion and three-time NCAA national championship qualifier. I don't really know what that means. So tell me about the experience of getting to that level and then realizing, wow, I actually have something here. And then maybe why didn't you go and try to pursue this full time, like in that realm? Like, what was that whole experience like?
Yeah. So in college, I immediately bumped up to like longer distance, so running the 5K and steeplechase. I guess
Yeah.
I'll backtrack a little bit. So like my freshman year, I did not redshirt cross country. I was consistently like the top 7, so it would have been on the varsity squad. And when it came down to qualifying for regionals and nationals, I didn't make the cut. So my freshman year, we missed I missed the opportunity to go to nationals, um, and I started pursuing the 5K right away, in like indoor track and outdoor. Um, but we went to a school, again, kind of like high school, like where we had a lot of coaching changes, and that led to just a lot of, athletes not trusting the process, not trusting the coaches, and the discipline
Hmm.
just wasn't there. And,
Sure.
I will say, like, myself and a core group of guys, like we definitely worked really hard, but we also had a lot of fun too in college. And so like the discipline wasn't exactly there, but we put the work in. And over time I started peeling back and going back towards the 1500 meter and the mile. And it wasn't until my junior year I qualified for nationals in the distance medley relay. So we so the distance medley is, for those that don't know, is a 1200-meter run. Second
Hmm.
leg runs 400 meters, third leg runs 800, and the last leg runs 1600 meters. And we had like the ninth fastest time in the country. We show up
Wow.
to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we finished ninth, which is just shy of All American, which is top 8.
Oh,
Um,
tough.
so it was a tough race, for me personally, just because I was the anchor leg,
Mm,
and a lot of pressure to perform well. But we were
yeah.
also going from basically sea level all the way to 5,000 feet, and
Yeah.
competing against a lot of schools from Colorado.
Yeah.
So I bought an altitude tent because I knew the next year
Okay.
nationals was also in Albuquerque. Um, but I guess looking in the following year, um, really we got a little bit more discipline. We started focusing a little bit more, and uh, we I guess so my senior year, or I guess my fourth year, I should say, not my senior year exactly, because I went 5 years,
Hmm.
redshirted a couple times. We qualified for cross country nationals as a team. Did fairly well. Nothing super special. Um, and then going into indoor season that year, that I guess I was that the same year? Sorry, now I'm trying to remember
No,
exactly
you're
how this
good.
played out. Um, it was the same year. So the year we qualified as a team, so our top 7 for nationals. That was the same year we also went to nationals for the distance medley relay.
Okay.
And then I did not qualify for nationals in outdoor that season. And then so my fifth year, I didn't have cross country, so I was just really focused on developing the engine.
Hmm.
Indoor nationals, I did not qualify for nationals, but then outdoor I qualified for the 1500 meter.
Okay.
And the so those are my 3 NCAA qualifying races. But going to the conference championships, we won the distance medley twice, and I won the mile at the conference meet my senior year or my 5th year, and those were some pretty exciting races. So I'll
Yeah.
talk about the distance medley. The first year we won, um, there was probably 4 or 5 teams that could have won the race, and we didn't even run the relay all season. So we put together our 4 fastest middle distance runners,
Wow.
and I remember looking at my coach, as the race is going on, and I'm like, I don't know how we're gonna do today. And he's like, well, you guys are gonna win. I go, well, I hope we win. He's like, no, you just gotta, you're gonna win. and and by the time the exchange was coming to the last leg, the 1600 meter, uh, there was basically there's four teams in it. So
Yeah.
I grabbed the baton in second place, but literally like footsteps behind the leader. And then third place was like basically at the same time as me, and then fourth was right there as well. And my thought, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna sit behind this guy, and then I'll kick. By the time we get to the end of the race, that my
Yeah.
mind was just sit and kick. But then the third place guy went around us right away, and he finished third in the 1500 meter at nationals the year before. And I'm like, there's no way in hell I can beat this guy. He finished third last year in the 1500 meter. He's the guy to beat. And so there was some exchange back and forth throughout the whole race. And I mean, this is a Division II race, so not like
Right.
Division I, but like I've never been in a stadium that was so electric and so loud. I mean, the roar of the people, it was insane. Like you couldn't even hear your own thoughts. And I remember by the time we got the last lap, so 8 laps to the 1600 meter indoor track, I was about 100 meters ago, and I'm in second place still. So we went back and forth
Oh my
3 times,
goodness.
and by the time at that point, I'm like, well, I've locked in second. This is as good as it's gonna get. I'm not gonna pass this guy. And the last turn, I was like, let's do this. So I went for one more pass,
Just
passed him.
drop the
And
hammer.
the crowd, or like the athletes from other teams, moved to the
Yeah.
track. So there's only like 2 lanes open to the track. So like
Oh my goodness.
imagine the entire like the last straightaway. I mean, just people just around you the whole time.
Yeah, and you're just
And
amped.
yeah, and I took the win for the team,
Wow.
and it was pretty awesome. The
Were you
following
like,
year,
hold on. Were
oh
you
yeah,
like diving ahead of this guy, like 100 meters, and he's ahead of you? How far ahead? Like, and then
no,
how
so
far did you beat him by?
I made the pass about 60 meters to go, and then I mean it's probably within a second, from
Yeah,
first to second
but
place. Yeah,
mentally he was done.
yeah, like
I
I
can
made
only
that
imagine.
pass and I held on, for dear life.
Ah, wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy. Okay.
Yeah, and then I guess so. The following year, we put together an awesome distance medley team at conference, and their goal there at conference that year was to qualify for nationals. So that was, you know, we wanted to make sure we hit the time to qualify,
Yeah.
and that race was equally as exciting because every team wanted to win that race,
Okay.
and we let's see. I'm trying to remember how this took out. So my teammate, he led the 1200, and like just I think we won that wire to wire actually, if I recall correctly. And but the thing is, the way the race unfolded, the the last 1600 meters, I never looked back, but a guy came up behind me with like 300 meters to go,
Mm.
and I could hear the crowd again. It was
Oh
just as
no.
electric. I'm like, I
Yeah.
know he's right there. I got to go, and I just kicked and won.
Wow.
Um, and then the third conference title was the mile. My senior year or my 5th year, and I remember talking to a handful of the competitors before the race, and because no one in the field had qualified for nationals yet, so we're like,
Okay.
all right, guys, let's go out hard, set the pace, and get a bunch of standards to qualify. And so we all went out right on target. I think we went out in like 32 seconds, for 290 meters. So we would have been well under, 408 pace.
That's so fast.
And then, and then some like the second lap though, some guy took the lead and the whole field just slowed down. So these conference races or championship races all get really tactical. So
Yeah.
then it just turned into everyone slowed way down, and I was like, shit. I'm like, I'm not gonna go for the lead right now,
Because
and
nobody wanted to lead out. You just
yeah,
like,
it just slowed down, so it just turned into a sit and kick race, and I mean, we were just if you watch the Olympics, the
yeah.
2016 Olympics, it was a very similar race to that. Matt Centrowicz, who's American, he won the race, and it was just a slow race, and they just turned into a sit and kick race. But yeah,
That's so strange.
Yeah, but during conference, right, this particular race, I remember thinking in my head like, well, the the goal hasn't been met. I'm just shutting it down at this point. So like, I remember at one point in the race, I was in fifth place, and I'm like, well, I can't qualify for nationals. What's the point? I was in my head. I was already in my head at that point. I was like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter now. And then for whatever, like, I think like the last 400 meters, I just was like, well, I might as well just like see what can happen in the last 400 meters.
Yeah.
And I just went for it, and I dropped like a 27-second last 200 meters and took the win in that race.
Wow.
But those three races were pretty dang exciting. Obviously, when you're on the track, it's just a fast paced environment, and it's pretty cool.
So I have a couple of stupid questions. For this medley race, are you actually passing a baton or is this like a stage race type of a deal where it's like a break in between?
Nope, it's you're passing the baton. Yep. So the first
Okay,
first
you are
leg,
passing a
first
baton.
person's running 1,200 meters, second's running 400, and then
Okay.
third 800, and last is 1,600 meter.
Okay, so that goes up, down, up. Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. So when you're making these kicks, because these races, I guess, are lasting several minutes. They're not like insane. How long would like a 1500? I guess like 4 minutes.
Yeah. So like if I'm running 1,500, we're running like between 350, 355. Depending on the
Okay.
race. Mile. If it's the mile, which indoor it's an actual mile. Not a
Okay.
metric race.
Okay.
So my best time indoor I think was 4:11 in the mile.
My word. Okay. So when you're like coming down to the ends of these races and you're like, well, I have 400 to go. I guess I better kick. I've done a few like very intense like uphills where it's like you almost quit breathing and it's just neuromuscular and you're just like tasting blood. Are you getting that when you're doing these races like at the very end? Like you're just is it tunnel vision? Are you
Oh
just
yeah.
like floating? Like where are you at?
Oh yeah, it's definitely tunnel vision. Like you just like you exact the way you described it. Like you taste the blood essentially, and
Yeah.
like your vision fogs up, and you're just
You're
hanging on
almost
for dear
dead.
life. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's crazy. Okay. So I just wanted to like I'm just trying to understand like how do you train for that when you like you said you and your sister you're going to do 3 mile races like you were I guess in high school at this point and then you're talking about these conference championships you're probably what 7 8 years older you're early 20s I would imagine.
Yeah. So yeah, in college, yeah, between 19, yeah, I guess like those races would have been I was 21 to 20, yeah, 21, 22 years old. Yeah.
Okay, so were you training like other than volume like in you're going to get mileage and then you're doing paces did you ever pay attention to like heart rate type of stuff?
No, in college, man, like we to kind of give you some background, like in college when I was training for the mile or the 1,500, I
Yeah.
average about 70 miles a week of running.
Okay.
Long run is about 17, and then obviously like that race like that fast, you're training for the demands of the race. So we were doing I remember doing like 12 by 400,
Yeah.
and we might start at 72 seconds, and then cut down to sub 60. Or if and I'm like one of the best workouts I ever did. I remember I did 2 by 600 at 127. So
Oh
to
my
kind of paint
goodness.
a picture there, like that would be like I'm sorry, 2 by 600 at 127, which would be equal to 156 800, and then doing 4 by 200 after that on the minute. So 30-second 200, 30 seconds rest, 30-second 200, 30-second rest,
Yeah.
and like a lot of speed. So
I wish I
really
could
getting the
see what
leg
your heart
turn.
rate was looking like for that stuff.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you back then. Um, we never really did a heart, yeah, never really had any heart rate training back then.
Yeah.
Um, we were also just like I said before, we were a little undisciplined. Like a lot of runs we would go on, like even easy runs, they would turn into like a tempo,
Yeah.
just like because there would be an athlete on the team that we didn't want to be around. So like when they would run up to us, we would just drop the pace and take off.
Oh, so poor guy.
So a lot of that happened too throughout college, and so the recovery, like it's funny because like back then I remember literally I don't know if there's ever a time we ran like slower than 7 minute pace.
Oh my
And I'm
goodness.
not even exaggerating. Um, Now I run 7:30, 8 minute pace all the time.
Yeah.
But the difference is like when you're in 20s, like you recover faster.
Yeah.
However, it was not smart. It was not the right thing to do.
Yeah, but it seems to pay off well. I mean, like, I've raced a few races where I know you have raced also, and just always looking at your run times and run splits, I'm like, this is crazy. Like, how do you even get to that point? But it sounds like kids, if you want to get faster running, throw yourself against a wall for the first 17, 18 years of your life, and
Yeah,
then,
yeah.
slow it down.
I think there is definitely some, yeah, like the years of volume definitely help, and
Sure.
again, like I was talking about, the experiencing discomfort too is like one thing, because like I even talked to like my nephew and my nieces about this that were in like running and things like that. Like everyone knows what effort is, but until you change that level and experience a
Yeah.
new level of effort and discomfort, that's when the growth happens.
Yeah.
Because at some point it always hurts or it's always
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then you just find out you can go faster and it's just as uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't get any worse. You just go faster.
Yeah. No, that's a good lesson for life. Yeah, everything's relative to
Yeah.
what your maximum pain that you've ever felt is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why didn't you, or did you decide like maybe I want to pursue this post college in terms of like
Yeah.
track, go to the Olympics type thing? Like what were you thinking?
So, uh, for a short period of time, I did, and I was in this program. I can't remember what they called it back then, but now it's called like Project Podium with USA Triathlon.
Yeah.
Based on my 1500-meter time, I qualified for it, and so Barb Lindquist was the coach. She's a former Olympian, and she was, sending us workouts to complete, to develop, the runners into swimmers and swimmers into runners, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. So, right after college, I started working for Abercrombie and Fitch, as a manager for the company at
Mm-hmm.
a store in Saginaw, and then I moved to Traverse City, and that's when I got serious. I started swimming and biking a little bit more, and then I had the opportunity to take a new role, and I was like, I'm done competing forever, and this isn't for me right now. Like, because I guess I should backtrack too. In college, I
Yeah.
was like when I raced, I was pretty anxious all the time, and I didn't enjoy that feeling, and I think I put a lot of pressure on myself.
Yeah.
So like I recognized that, and I didn't want to go through that again. So
Mm.
I was like, I'm gonna focus on my career, and I did for about 5 years at that point until I found triathlon again.
So what did you graduate college with, or what did you?
So I graduated college with a criminal justice degree in
Oh,
2011.
interesting.
Yeah,
And then you were like, I'm gonna go work at Abercrombie.
yeah, yeah. So the
So it's a little
segue
tongue
was,
in cheek.
yeah, yeah. So, but the segue was when I moved into the loss prevention department. So, I was
Okay.
dealing with a lot of criminals, working with law enforcement quite a bit,
Wow.
and so I had a really interesting job.
Yeah.
Um, and like early on, my title was an agent, so I was literally just in a store in Toledo catching shoplifters, and
Wait, were you like undercover? Like what do you
oh yeah, yep. So
actually?
yeah, yeah.
What? That's
Yeah,
crazy.
but per the policies back then with Abercrombie and Fitch, like we had to wear like the dress code. So if you know anything about Abercrombie and Fitch in the past, like everyone in the stores looked the same. They all wore
Yeah.
flannel, jeans, flip flops, or Converse. Clean shaven. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
everything like back in the past. But um, so catching them sometimes was difficult because like we
Your
literally just
flip
looked like we
flops.
worked at the store. Yeah. Well, I wore Converse, but
Okay.
there was a couple foot chases that happened throughout the malls, and that was always a lot of fun. But
I didn't even
and
know that they had that kind of a person on staff. That's insane.
yeah, yeah. So like a lot of companies now so I don't know what their policy is now, but back then, the companies were hands on, so they could use any reasonable force to control the situation because a lot of people get
Right.
violent. So, getting law enforcement or like mall security nearby to help apprehend someone was always, in everyone's best interest to keep everyone safe.
Right.
But yeah, like, I worked a lot alongside with Toledo police a lot and they were really helpful. And it was pretty neat. But then after that, then I started doing a lot more internal investigations. So I'm a certified forensic interviewer as well. So I can, so the goal is to find out the truth. So like if I'm interviewing someone, I'm asking questions to understand how they respond and things like that. But also, when it comes to like an assumptive question, for example, trying to find out if they're lying to me at that point.
Yeah.
and then getting people to admit whatever crime they've committed, and then obtaining a statement.
Wow. So what is the strategy like to get someone to tell you the truth? Do you, oh, I'm your friend. You can trust me. Because I used to do that with
Pretty.
my younger sister. Like, I'll never tell mom, I promise.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, like, there is a script, that kind of goes along with it, and but yeah, you want to build rapport. Like basically, the steps. You have to do some background investigation of the person, so you understand like where they live. You're asking questions that you already know the answer to. That way, you
Okay.
see how they respond to a truthful answer, and then you build rapport with the person. But the first time I should see like some type of reaction where I know if they're guilty or not is when I tell them what I do. Like I might say, "Hey, my
Oh,
name's
because their
Derek."
body will change.
Yeah, yeah. I'll say like I'm an investigator for X, Y, and Z, and then like you should see like their eyes open up, or
Yeah.
they might just get really curious, like, oh, this is cool. Like, what is he talking?
Yeah.
If you see they're really interested, then they probably have no idea what you're talking about, and they want to
Okay.
get, because like then they're like involved in the investigation, and they're like thinking like, okay, I'm gonna help this guy,
Yeah. Yeah.
But and then from there, I would talk about how we do investigations, from covert cameras to obviously other witnesses and things like that. Like, for me, is like always the point of sale system. So looking at transactions and understanding, if people are committing fraud, some type of refund fraud or something like that. So
Yeah. Wow.
talk about how we investigate, and after that, I would talk about how losses occur. So but when I talk about how losses occur, by the time I get to the point and talk about what they did, I'd slow down, and there should be another reaction. Um,
Because they're
and that,
anticipating.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. And then then you start building rapport with the person, and or you start to rationalize with them. So it's like there's a lot of different reasons why people make mistakes. It could be peer pressure, it could be financial, So then you kind of
Yeah.
create a story around why it
Yeah.
might be okay to steal money, So I'd create a story, talk about that, and then kind of flip the role around and say, like, look, what if you were a manager at the store and you saw two employees doing something that they should not be doing? And you sit down with the first person and they straight up lie to you and they walk away. But then you sit down with the second person and they open up to you and talk about the struggles they're facing in their life. Which person would you rather work with? And they say, oh, the second person. Like, great,
Hmm.
me too. So then you start to get them to understand, like, hey, I want to be like the second person. I want to tell the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah.
Um, and then like, so then there's a few more steps, but then by the time I'd ask the assumptive question, I'd say, like, look, what's the most amount of money you've ever taken from the company? And it wasn't $100,000, was it? So you'd always like overshoot,
Yeah.
because you'll pause for a second. So like, for example, like if I said that, they might say like, oh no, it wasn't that much. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
So
How much was it?
you
More or
got
less
the
than $100.
confession.
Cause so that's an
Yeah.
admission right there.
Yeah.
And then they start to build up the admission or find out what they're using the money for, because that solidifies it. But it also creates the human element too, because like everyone does make mistakes, and
Sure.
that was a good thing. The thing I enjoyed about my job, because I would literally speak with people that like were put in really tough positions,
Yeah.
and there's times where people were walking out with the police and they were thanking me because the way I talked to them and the way I treated them during that process. And so like everyone sees like these police interviews online or like on TV, and
Yeah.
it's not like that at all. A lot of the police adapt to what type of interview we do. Like when I went to the classes, there's always law enforcement with us. So again, really interesting job.
Yeah.
But yeah, the times were changing, and I wanted to uh, work with people that were motivated and not criminals.
Yeah, for sure. So then I guess that's at the point when you started taking on triathlon and you started coaching?
Yep. So when I moved to Nashville, let's see, I moved down there in 2015. Did my first, like, did, well, it wasn't my first triathlon, but I got back involved in the sport and started training for Ironman Louisville. Um, did well. So I started doing well too. And people were asking me, like, what are you doing to run off the bike so well? And so
Yeah.
then I started to like do some research. I'm like, I don't, I just run, and
Yeah.
started digging in a little bit more.
Ran fast
Uh,
as a kid?
yeah, yeah. So in 2017, I got my USAT coaching certification. Started coaching a handful of athletes, And at that time, I was like, this is what I want to do. And I started really enjoying it, enjoyed the process of working with athletes.
Sure.
And, you know, Conrad, so my business
Yep.
partner, he started doing the same thing. When we knew each other, we had our own separate, coaching businesses at the time, but we were good friends. We competed against each other a lot. And we were always already intertwined, so I would say single-handedly, like we really just enhanced the community in Nashville when it came to triathlon,
Yep.
especially during COVID. When COVID
Uh,
happened and everything was shut down, we started putting on a bunch of time trials. And we would travel to races in Alabama, in Tennessee, the middle of nowhere, Tennessee,
Yep.
just to get some races in. So we really engaged with the athletes, and when a lot of coaching companies were maybe struggling, like or I shouldn't even say struggling, like they may have put less effort in because there's no races. We just did more. We
Yeah, you guys doubled down.
yeah,
That's really neat. So then you rate like what year is that? You said you moved to Nashville in 2015 and then you started.
2015. Yep, started coaching in 2017,
Okay.
and then
You joined up and with Conrad in during the pandemic or pre-pandemic?
I guess right after the pandemic. I guess it was
Okay.
probably sometime during the pandemic, and then because we sat down one time,
Yeah.
we were at we're like, let's quit our jobs and build the best coaching community we can, and
Yeah.
at the time, I wasn't sure because at some point too, I left Abercrombie and Fitch and I started working for a
Yeah.
tractor supply company. So I was like their
Okay.
divisional. I covered the western half of the country, and I really
Nice.
enjoyed working there. And
Yeah.
but a couple things kind of happened. My wife, she was working. We had our first son, and she found out that her company was opening an office in Cleveland, and she's from up here. And she's like, "What if we move to Cleveland and you pursue coaching?" And I was like, "Let's do it." And moved up here, quit, left my job, and because I knew I'd need the flexibility. I knew it'd be a little
Yeah.
bit more challenging, like just the dynamic of our work schedules. Like I wasn't going to be able to go into the office or travel a whole lot at the time, and yeah, so I left my job and started coaching full time.
Yeah. So you're not in Cleveland right now, right? You are.
I am in Cleveland, Ohio.
You are in Cleveland. So you
Yep.
went from Nashville to Cleveland.
Yep.
Okay. So you've got a handful of athletes that I would assume that lived in that area as well, but then you also have Nashville. So what's the dream for working triathlete?
Yeah. So,
National or
well, I
yeah,
mean, we are national, so I mean, actually
international?
global. Yeah, we are
Okay, well,
internationally. I've coached athletes in South Africa,
oh wow,
England. I have an athlete now in Canada, so or at least maybe at least one.
yeah,
But yeah, so like I still have athletes in Nashville. I have athletes up here, and it's it's been awesome. Like the community, it's again going back to the community aspect. That's what Conrad are really focused on is building that community. And
yeah,
while not everyone can experience like the in-person workouts that we do because they live in different cities,
sure,
we do provide opportunities where people can join us for camps or obviously
yeah,
team races that really enhance that experience as well.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Speaking of team races, are you going to be down doing Daytona?
So I won't be at Daytona.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I think everyone knows now I'm gonna race as a pro the rest of
Yep.
my career, at least this year and next year. We'll see what happens after that. But Daytona will not have a pro race this year. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna race in Indian Wells,
okay.
and we will have a big group in Daytona though.
Yeah, for sure. So we can talk about, I want to talk about a few things now, but moving into your pro career, because we're just talking about that now, you could have taken your pro license many years ago, I would assume.
Yeah,
Is that incorrect? Or that's correct.
it's correct. Yep, yep.
So tell
So
me
yeah,
why you did it and why you're doing it now.
yeah. For the longest time, well, so when I first got into triathlon, like back in when we got married, moved to Nashville, I was like, I'm gonna become a pro triathlete, and then I was like, nah, I'm just gonna have fun with it, and like I was satisfied with where I was, like competing as an athlete. I was doing well, but I also had a lot of balance. Like
Yeah.
I lived in Nashville, it was
Work,
a fun
family.
city, yeah, everything else. But then this year, I'm in Milwaukee and I see Jan win the PTO US Open. I'm like, this dude is 42 years old, and like what am I doing? Like I might as well just give it a go.
Yeah.
And so I submitted my application to USAT and sent my credentials to Ironman. And I was like, all right. And so I guess the biggest thing, oh, sorry, the biggest thing was at the time I was just satisfied, and I still am. Like the intent for me is like I'm not going to try to make a living as being a pro athlete,
Yeah.
but I want to be an example to my kids of like showing them like, hey, it's okay to be ambitious. It's okay to reach further and push the limits to just pursue being great, So like I know it's already driving me to be a better athlete because
Yeah.
I'm training more. I still don't train. I don't train a whole lot, Like I'm averaging 14 hours a week right now, which you know there's age groupers definitely training more than that, But it's
Yeah.
more than what I was training before.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit more balance now that we have a toddler and a little
Mm-hmm.
one, but I want to kind of prove to myself that I could at least get in the mix a little bit,
Yeah.
and see what could happen.
So what about we talked earlier about you were like, "Oh, I don't want to pursue this running and track thing because just the anxiety of you put a lot of pressure on yourself." Did that have any part to play in not taking your pro license? And then now that you're taking it, is that going to play a part?
No, yeah, that's a great question. So, I was apprehensive before because I was like, I don't want to get to a pro start line and be all alone on the bike. That was like what was going through my head.
Yeah.
But I did like when I did Ohio this year, I saw like two people on the bike the whole ride. So I don't think a whole lot's going to change, to be honest, as
Yeah.
far as where like how many people I'm going to see throughout the race.
Yeah.
Obviously, if I have a good swim, I can tag along with people on the bike. But as far as like the mental side of things, no, like I'm sure I'm gonna experience a little bit more excitement and nerves once I get to Indian Wells. But
Yeah.
right now, the
I,
way I'm looking at it is I'm just starting in a different wave. Like that's
yeah.
the only thing that's changing for me,
Yeah.
and it's true. Like the only thing that's changing is like I'm not doing a rolling start with the age groupers. I'm just starting with a mass start with the pros.
Yeah.
So the dynamic is going to change a little bit, but other than that, like my start time is 5 minutes earlier.
Yeah. Do you have a goal for this race?
Um, yeah, like definitely want to break four. So I haven't broken four yet. I've gotten
Okay.
close quite a few, handful of times, and I've never been as consistent as I have been these last couple of months. So breaking four would be great. I'd love to break 350. That would require me to be able to bike with the pack, and I just don't know if my swim will be there. But
Yeah.
I'm really confident I'll have I should have the best race of my life, at this first race.
Yeah. Just because you've been more consistent with training, new level of motivation with a child, you're fresh in the pro field. Like, what are all the variables there?
Yeah. So obviously training is one thing, but also just leveling up with the pro field. So like now if I'm running with these guys or I'm biking with them, I'm at push it a little bit more, So I think the dynamic of the race will just change entirely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it'll be a pretty cool experience.
Yeah. Have you ever struggled with this journey of triathlon? Like, ever come to a place where you're like, oh, maybe I'm just done?
Oh yeah, every year, and
Yeah.
quite
Literally.
honestly, so I mean, a couple months ago, I was like, I think I'm done with it, and I was like, I'm just gonna pursue running. I'm gonna chase the marathon Olympic trial standard, which is 2:18. Um, but I like the variety too much. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I love running. Don't get me. I love like I can go out and run 2 hours and not think twice about it. If I'm going out for a 2 hour bike ride, I'm like looking at my watch every minute. I'm like, oh, when is this ride done?
Yeah.
But I do like the variety of training because like
Yeah.
I am getting older, so like things hurt a lot. I
Mm-hmm.
take care of my body, but that. So yes, I thought about it in the past, and especially this year, because I was like I could really pursue running again, and probably do pretty well these next couple of years.
Yeah.
But I like the sport, the dynamic of it is a little bit more interesting to me as well. Like, I went and ran a sub 108 half marathon a few weeks ago, and like that was great. But like just the variety and
Yeah.
the the experience of triathlon is just a little bit bigger, in my
Yeah.
opinion, and I like that.
Yeah. That's super cool. So to be able to maintain, it sounds like you don't have to do as much work as other people to maintain the speed in the legs to be able to run a 108. I would assume you're trying to break like what 115 for running off the bike in Indian Wells.
Yeah, I'd like to go like 112 or faster there for sure.
Okay.
Because I've broken 115 a couple times, so definitely going sub like 112 or faster would be an ideal race for me, I think.
Yeah. So you said you're training 14 to 15 hours a week. I'm curious how much of that is run time slash volume, and I would love to hear like how often you do like speed work versus in spring, summer, fall, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I'm pretty well balanced year round, or at least I have been in the past. This year will probably change a little bit because my load is going up a little bit more. I guess I'll start with the swim. I try to target three swims a week. I realistically I should be swimming more. It's just the biggest time suck.
Yeah.
Last year I was averaging like a little over 6,000 yards a week. Now, as long as I'm hitting over 10,000, I feel pretty good about it. When it comes to cycling, I do 3 key sessions a week. So, and the biggest thing that's changed with the bike is, before I might do like 2 key sessions during a week that were like an hour long. Now I'm doing some key sessions that are like 2 hours long during a weekday. So like lunch, I'll do like a workout, or early, like this morning I did 90 minutes before everyone woke up this morning. So the volume and just the workouts alone are just getting bigger. And that's really the biggest thing that's changed for me right now. And then the weekend long ride, I'm doing a lot of intensity in there too, or at least race specific intensity. So I'm not ever doing anything super hard on the bike at this point, as a leader.
Just like threshold work and race pace stuff.
Yeah, threshold and like zone 3 work. Yep, going into Indian Wells. And then same thing for the run. Run, I generally just do like 1 key session a week. Um, so that's Thursdays. I lead a track workout here in Westlake on Thursdays, and a lot of that's going to be race pace or a little bit faster than race pace. So, like for example, last week I did 2x2 mile at 10:40, and then I did 2 by mile. The first one was at 5:12, and the second, my last mile was 4:56. That was a little bit on the edge, because I train by feel a lot, so I want to be in the flow. Like I never want to push it super hard and empty the tank just because now I'm raising the volume. I just want to be fresh enough every day to make sure I'm not digging a hole.
Yeah.
I try to run as frequently as possible. And so that's almost daily. The only times I don't run is if the day is caught up with me and I just can't get the run in. I did do a key session, or I shouldn't say key session, but I did like some tempo work today on the run too. So this week I'll get 2 key sessions in on the run. Long runs, I very rarely push it. I just kind of go out like for a stroll,
You just
and
kind of go by feel, like if it
yeah, I just
feels
go
good.
out and enjoy the scenery. I live 4 miles from Lake Erie, so I'll run straight to Lake Erie, run down Lake Erie a bit, and just enjoy the view of the water, and kind of loop back at some point. And the rest is just filler miles. I'll add strides and things like that, but
Like 30 seconds, 10 by 30 seconds.
yeah.
So,
hmm But yeah, just the overall volume increase. I haven't done a ton of like the key sessions I do on Thursdays. Like they're big sessions. I'm doing 6, 7, 8 miles worth of work in those sessions.
okay.
And then occasionally a Tuesday I'll do some type of tempo, or maybe some type of alternative work to kind of increase the engine as well.
Yeah. So what are you excited for going into this next year?
I'm excited. Mostly for the athletes I work with. I have a few that are probably going
Really?
to make the leap as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I work with some awesome athletes, and from a personality perspective to just like their determination and their willingness to put in the work. Um, Obviously, like there's races I'll be racing alongside some athletes, and some I'll just be watching them race. But like I guess I'll share. When I was at Ohio this year, uh,
Yeah.
a girl I coached, she won the women's race, and
Yeah. Caroline, right?
seeing what's that?
Caroline or
Yep,
yeah.
Caroline. Yeah. So I knew she could win the race. Like I was very confident, she would win the race.
Yeah.
And I was also racing though, but I had no idea where she was until the run. I saw her with the lead bike, and like I had goosebumps in the middle of the run, and that got me excited too. So seeing the success of the athletes is pretty awesome. But I think what I'm most excited about is just seeing some people level up and take that next step, and seeing how they can perform against the field as well.
Yeah. That's awesome. How many athletes are you coaching right now?
Enough to make ends meet. So I'll say that. So,
Yeah.
um, there's always a flow, but during the time of year, like obviously our goal, from when you think about like just a coaching business, like retention's good because the longevity of an athlete staying on is always super important.
Yeah.
Um, but because the growth is long term, but we do have athletes that it's like their bucket list. Like, hey, I want to do an
Yeah.
Ironman, and
Yeah.
you know that they're going to be on for 6 months or whatever it may be, and that's it.
Yeah.
And they never touch a sport again.
Yeah.
But I'm at a point where I coach, a good amount of athletes where um, I can sustain I can sustain life, which is good.
Yeah, for sure. How many athletes are total in like the community now, the working
The
triathlete community?
So the ecosystem that I guess between like
All the tiers
one-on-one,
and
yeah, so we have like one-on-one coached athletes, then we have like you know, then we have tier three, which is like we call it the universal plan. And then we have
hmm
tier four athletes, or we're actually changing the name to like team, the team membership. We have around, 300 to 400 athletes, in the whole ecosystem.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So do you guys have like KPIs or metrics, you and Conrad and the team, of like how many athletes you want to grow to by a certain date, or is it just keep fostering the community, see what happens?
Yeah. I don't know if it's like obviously the goal of growth is is good, but I think the quality of what we're delivering is more important. So like you know, I think naturally, like we're gonna have more traction every year, and we've added coaches every single year too, which is obviously gonna help because like we can only coach so many athletes,
Yeah.
like each person, you only have so much time in a day,
Yeah.
and but I wouldn't say there's a certain number that we want to grow to. I think it's just more about I think about like just the overall presence as a whole. Like we like when we did multi-sport nationals, we had a handful of individual titles. We won both relays, the mixed team relays, and like so we had a big presence there. We always have a big presence in Chattanooga. So I think about like
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like I want to grow that presence at those races and that experience. Like in Chattanooga, we had a team dinner of 75 people the last 2 years,
Oh, wow.
and
It's a big dinner.
yeah, and like in Ohio we had maybe 20, but like I want to grow that too. Like
Yeah.
I want to have like those team dinners. I think it's kind of the same thing, So I think about like the growth of the whole ecosystem, but like the growth of like these dinners before a race. I'm like, okay, if we can have
Yeah.
100 people at a dinner of these athletes sharing this experience before the race day, and they go out to battle the next day, like that's cool.
Yeah. Sweet, man. Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to see what happens. Indian Wells is just coming up too. Is it in December?
December 3rd, yeah, yeah,
December 3rd. That's awesome.
yeah. I can't wait. It's going to be a fun one. The only thing I need to prepare for is the cold water, which there's a good
Yeah.
chance I'm going to start swimming in Erie, as the water temps drop below 60 degrees, because
Ugh.
I know it's cold out there, so I got to adapt to that.
Yeah. How cold do you think it actually will be?
I think last year was
Or-
around 56 degrees, the water temp.
That's
So
cold.
it's cold enough, like, I mean, I, I don't know. Like, I'm just like thinking in my head, I'm like, man, that's going to be chilly.
Yeah. Are you gonna wear like a cap? I mean, I would wear like earplugs because when cold water hits my eardrum, it's like makes me sick.
So that's I've been reading about that, and I think I'm gonna wear earplugs because like I need to test it out in Erie too. Like I need to see how I respond because I did swim out there a week ago and without a wetsuit. It was still in the 60s, but like I stopped for a second. I was chatting with another athlete, and I was like, man, I am really uncomfortable right now. I gotta head back. I went out the next day. I was wearing a wetsuit, and I was fine. I was completely fine.
Yeah.
But I do need to experiment with the cap and the earplugs for sure.
Yeah. So out of just because I like wearing them now, I always race with earplugs because it like keeps me calm when you
Hmm.
can't hear everybody else splashing around you. So maybe that'll help as well. But yeah, I've done a few cold races with the cold water in the ear, and it's like I just want to vomit the whole time, and you
Yeah.
can't even think. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
it's one thing I've read about too, and like I mean, I've swam in really cold water before. Like I remember, when I lived in Nashville, still, I remember Conrad and I and a few others were in Percy Priest, and it was below 60, and I was like, this is too cold. I can't be in here. But
yeah,
it probably wasn't any colder than what it's gonna be in Indian Wells. So I've been doing some research. I think I'm gonna have to do some ice baths to not promote recovery, but really just to adapt to the cold water.
yeah, for sure. Are you doing altitude tent stuff still these days?
No, no, not with a spouse now. So that
Yeah,
I stopped doing, in college. The goal was to acclimate for the altitude to race at altitude.
yeah,
But that was interesting. Like, so I
yeah.
learned a lot about it back then. Like the at least the research back then was sleep high, train low. And I honestly haven't done a ton of research on altitude training lately, but I think the
Mm-hmm.
principles are still pretty similar.
Yeah,
You do feel pretty crummy like when you're in that progressive state of in the tent before because like you start training that next day, and you just feel the fatigue and everything. Because
yeah.
I would sleep at an equivalent of like I think 11,000 feet if I recall correctly, so pretty high.
Can you explain that just the whole altitude tent thing, like how that works? Because I've heard it's noisy and it's hot, and I don't understand how in the world it would like get you to 11,000 feet. How does that work?
Yeah, so this particular tent, I don't know what to call the brand or anything, but you basically have an enclosure that surrounds your bed. It's you know,
Yeah.
it's a tent, but within the tent, so you have a generator that is pumping air through the tent that is has less oxygen in it. So there's a gauge that you'd have keep in the tent that tell you what the percentage of oxygen is, and
That seems
that's
dangerous.
yeah. But you're right, it does get hot. I remember it got hot because like you think about an enclosement that's like no bigger than a queen size bed. It gets humid in there pretty quickly. So in the winter time, I think I just left my windows open.
Yeah.
We had a house full of cross country guys, and I think I just left my windows open because it got so hot that it was enough to cool it down.
Yeah. That's so crazy. But what it pups in less oxygen. So are there like, do they make you sign something before you do this? If it depletes your oxygen levels between 25% and you die, it's not our fault. Like, it seems like super sketchy.
I bought the tent secondhand, so I
Nice.
guess if you're buying a product, you could probably do whatever the hell you want with it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think there was athletes that had like a whole chamber that like was their room, so they had like their room sealed off,
It's super
and which would be reasonable as long as you could get like the right amount of oxygen in it, in each like setting, because
Yeah.
if you open a door, obviously air is moving around back and forth.
Yeah. Super fascinating. Cool, man. Well, I have one more question for you. In the spirit of the Stupid Questions podcast, people have been getting on me recently for not asking enough stupid questions. So I have something I'm going to ask you.
All right.
So the price of Girl Scout cookies is going up. To help cover for the rising costs of the bakeries that produce them, boxes of Thin Mints and the rest of them are that used to cost $5 will now cost $6 in many areas. Would love to get your thoughts on that.
Wow. I probably would never pay attention to the price, so I'd still buy them.
Yeah,
and the Thin Mints are really good. I would, the, man, yeah. I think obviously inflation is real, and the Girl Scouts got they got to meet their quotas, right? So,
yeah.
but that's honestly something I don't think I'd ever even look at the price of Girl Scout cookies and know they
Yeah, when you're
even
out there at
what.
Walmart, I don't even think do they. Yeah, how do they do? It's usually you sell them outside of Walmart, I guess. But now I think you actually can buy them on the shelves. So
Yeah,
maybe you
well,
can look at the
yeah.
price of them.
I mean, they used to go door to door, and like, so I have a no soliciting sign at my house, but I always
Nice,
say like if
except Girl Scouts.
no one ever reads it though, because I have people knock on my door asking to spray bugs. But if it's a Girl Scout, I'm definitely buying cookies for sure,
Yeah,
even if they're $1 more.
nice. Yeah, even if they're dollar more. Well, good news, good news. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Derek, for coming on and telling a little bit of your story. We'll definitely be following your journey, especially as you go and race Indian Wells and go into the next year. Super excited for you. I hope I get to race you again at some point and try to track you down for this next year. Are you going to be racing Chattanooga? Because it's on the
Mo-
Pro Series now.
it is in the Pro Series, so yeah, I will likely race Chattanooga. Well, we'll also
Cool.
see how many athletes we have racing though, because
Yeah.
I raced it this year and I was exhausted before the race even happened because
Yeah.
we had a big crew there. Like obviously the balance of being a coach and an
Yeah.
athlete is tricky. You know, but I will say Chattanooga is probably one of my favorite cities to race
Mm-hmm.
in. So to pass up the opportunity to race there, in the pro field would be tough.
Yeah.
So there's a good chance I'm gonna race it, but I'll have to balance my time pretty well, before I get down there.
Yeah. Likelihood of you qualifying for world champs next year, 70.3s? I think
Yeah,
it's pretty possible.
man. I honestly, like, I have thought about this. So I've thought about this, and I'm like, if I can target the right races,
It's
if
possible.
the I think it's definitely possible. So it is a goal of mine, but then I also think about like the flight, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I've flown to Africa before.
Just the time it takes to get
It's
there.
relentless. You're just in the airplane forever,
It's like
and
17 hours, I think, one of them.
I
Yeah,
do
it's
not
insane.
enjoy that at all. So,
Yeah.
like, I honestly, if I qualified, like, unless someone's paying me like to be down there for like a month and they have a first class ticket, I don't know if I could make the flight. Like, I don't mind flying just
Yeah.
as flying, but like sitting in a seat for 24 hours will drive me nuts.
Oh, yeah. Ankles start swelling because you're not eating the great food. Yeah. Have to do
Yeah,
some handstands in the back of the plane.
yep, yep.
Yeah. So, how did you get noticed by Everyman Jack? How was it joining that team and how long were you on the team?
Yeah. So I first found them. I remember the first year I started racing, I did a race in Alabama, and it's called the Rocket City Triathlon. And I met a guy named Chris Douglas, and there's
Okay.
another athlete there wearing the kit, and they crushed everyone. And I'm like, "What is Everyman Jack?" And they started telling
Yeah.
me about it. Um, it's either the next year or 2 years later. So I had an interview with Rich, the founder of Everyman Jack, the company,
Yeah.
and didn't make it that cut. But the following year, I got on the team, and it was a great team. Like the culture, it was awesome. Obviously, like I think Rich did a really really great job with not just obviously the guys are fast, but the personalities and the character of everyone was top notch.
Yeah.
And you know, the pinnacle of being on a team that was going to the camp, because the camp was in Vegas. You go out there, ride, swim, run hard, and
Yeah.
then like the last night we all went out in town, and and I remember the last night we like me and a couple of guys were out till like 4 in the morning, and
Oh my
then
goodness.
and then we had a swim at 6 in the morning, and I could not finish that swim. But no, it was the team is well balanced. Like obviously, there's a lot of guys on the team that were. Are very dedicated, very motivated, very fast. But there's
Yeah.
there's a lot of balance on the team too, which
Yeah.
is good.
So I'm curious because the reason I asked this is because someone recommended that I apply, and I got an email from Rich last night asking for the interview. So I would love to hear about what was the interview thing? How did that go?
I think he's just looking to learn more about the athletes, more about you, and
Hmm.
just look at the character of each person,
Sure.
goals and objectives, things like that. Because I like they're that's a marketing. They're marketing the brand itself, so
Yeah, through it. Yep.
Um, so race performances matter, but like presence, I think in social media and the community matter quite a bit too. So
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember what kind of stuff we talked about, but
Yeah.
I was interested naturally just because like I worked in retail at the time, and obviously he had a retail product. So
Yeah.
I remember talking to him about just like some of the metrics that they were kind of keen off of and stuff like that. But
Yeah. Super
yeah.
interesting. I'll have to drop your name then.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely tell him you
Yeah.
spoke with me.
Yeah. I
Yeah, I
will.
I still chat with him every now and
Sweet,
then.
man.
We talk about just different stuff beyond triathlon now. Every time we'll shoot him a
Yeah.
text every now and then. Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you know how big the company is in terms of annual revenue and employee count?
No, so I know a few years ago, private equity, you know, probably they definitely got
They joined in.
involved. Yeah, they jumped in. So I'm guessing the numbers are probably not public at this point. But as far as
Yeah.
employee count, man, I don't know. I've seen the headquarters. You know, when I went out to San Francisco this year, I
Oh,
remember seeing
nice.
the headquarters out there. But
That's awesome.
yeah, because I don't even know if he's. I know he's probably still a part owner, but I don't know if he's involved as much as he
That
used to
much.
be. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I got a feel for, just by what I've observed and the research I've done. But it'll be interesting to jump on and talk to him. That's awesome. So, how many years were you on EMJ?
I was on for 3 years, and then
Okay, nice.
I remember, when I reached out to Rich to tell him I was gonna step away, is when, I decided to coach full time because at that point it was like, I mean, literally doing the same thing that he did, building a
Yeah,
team to market, obviously, and things like that. So
yeah,
he obviously understood,
yeah,
and uh, I loved being on the team. It was a
yeah.
blast, and like I said, great group of guys. Really enjoyed it.
Well, cool, man. Again, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure, and looking forward to following along this next year. We'll make sure to tag your social medias and the working triathlete stuff to whoever wants to follow the journey.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode with Derek Stone on the Stupid Questions podcast. If you made it to this point in the video, just want to say thank you so much. And also want to say a huge thank you to my guy. I don't know why it showed that thumbs up. Okay. Thank you to my guy, Derek Stone, for coming on, talking about his life, how he got into the sport, everything that he's got going on from work to life to having a kid to becoming a pro. And just want to thank you guys again for being here and listening. If you have made it to this point in the video, like I was saying, if you wouldn't mind, if you're watching on YouTube, give this video a like and subscribe. If you are on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please give it a review and a 5-star rating. And for the final thing, we have recently launched a website. If you want to check out that website, it will be linked in the description below. It is stupidquestions.show. On there, if you sign up for our newsletter, we're going to be doing some giveaways with our sponsor, Rudy Project. We have some hats, we have water bottles, we have some sunglasses, and some shirts that we need to give away. So if you would like to be included in that drawing, sign up, and we'll be announcing more about that in future episodes.